Katie, the Education Director here at Carolina Tiger Rescue, and it is Thursday, I've been told. And we are here today to give an update on our 4 girl servals that came from British Columbia back in November, right before Thanksgiving, but also to tell you a little bit about how we do vet procedures. And if I get distracted, it's because the vultures are out sunning themselves trying to dry off from the morning rain. So if you want to come over here, I'll give you an update on our 4 girls first. So over here we have Blondie. Are you going to come back? So remember, servals are native to Africa. They only live on the continent of Africa in the wild. This is Blondie, one of the 4 girls. We got 7 servals from British Columbia back in November, about 2 days before Thanksgiving. Actually, it was a fun, exciting time for us to get them. They actually came from a backyard breeder. They were living in RVs, and people were breeding them to sell the kittens into the pet trade. They had no regular ventilation. They also had no natural sunlight, and so we were extremely worried once we got them how they would look and how what their medical needs may be. And we'll go over that in just a few minutes. But they are loving being outside. It's been really exciting to see them. We don't know that they had any time outside where they were living, so we have enjoyed them. Where they go? They're all hiding.
We got one on the other side of the platform.
So this is Queen. Pretty sure. Queen lives with Cher. No, I got that backwards. This is Cher. That's Queen. They're a little hard, and I've already practiced this morning, and I already messed it up. And then also Stevie lives in here. So initially we had all 4 girls living together in the same enclosure, which goes 2 more shifts back. And then again, we like to separate them for feeding, and it's really hard to shift apart 4 girls when there's 3 shifts. So we have moved Blondie over. The hope is that Blondie will get along with one of our other servals, Daxon, who lives in that enclosure as well, so that the 2 of them can cohabitate, kind of like what we did with Shira and Saber. Right now they seem a little indifferent to each other. Not a bad thing. They're definitely not, we haven't seen any squabbles. They just have a shared gate. They don't have access to one another. So, and then Stevie has disappeared. She's in there somewhere. So as you can see, their enclosure is just a little bit different than some of the other enclosures we've seen. And we've got you looking right into the sun. But they have lots of high platforms. They like to be up high. Here at the rescue in Africa, they'll hang mainly on the ground. And but they've got platforms, and they've got a den box. And again, because these guys are native to warmer climates, we have a heating pad that's on the end of this, on the inside of that box to keep it warm. And then we are taking straw out. It's starting to get warmer, so we're taking the straw out, which is a good insulator for them. These guys are not allowed treats because they'll fight over it. And they're very grabby. And we want to make sure that they don't hurt each other and they don't hurt themselves as well. So, when we need to do a vet procedure, which could come up for many different reasons, with these ladies as well as the boys, we did vet procedures when they first came into quarantine, and our quarantine building is up there. They spent 30 days in quarantine. To make sure that they are healthy. If they have any diseases that we need to treat or anything that could potentially be passed to other animals, we want to go ahead and get that treated. So they spend 30 days in quarantine, and then during that time they're given a physical by our vet, but their temperaments are assessed to determine are they going to be good animals to be potentially along the tour path, or do they have the temperament of, I don't really like people, I want to stay further away from the tour path. These 4, probably would have been just fine along the tour path. We also just didn't have space along the tour path, so we put the boys on tour path instead. So, when it's time to do a vet procedure, what we'll do is we'll get 1 crated up. We're going to only do 1 at a time because having 4 servals under sedation is not the best idea. So we'll get 1 crated up, and then what we'll do is we'll get the pulse syringe. And on the end of this, our vets will put a syringe with sedation medication. Once they're in the crate, we'll just go and poke them with the sedation medication. We'll walk away and let them go to sleep without any other distractions, because if you think about it, when you're trying to go to sleep, if there's lots of noise, you're going to be fighting off sleep, and that's the same thing with these guys. So we use that pulse syringe to go ahead and poke them. If we're doing a big guy, though, of course, very few of them are going to come lay by the fence and let us stick them with the syringe. So what we will actually use for them is the dart gun. Ideally, we of course would do the pulse syringe with them, and that's like if you watched our lesson last week, or our video last week with Marissa and the Mo girls, what she eventually hopes to have them do is be able to lay along the fence to give them that sedation medication should we need to, what we call is knocking them down or sedate them. So one thing that we looked at with these girls, knowing that they, and the boys too, knowing that they came from a backyard breeder, is we wanted to make sure that we got x-rays on them. So a lot of times when they are bred in backyards or are not being bred for that kind of capacity of having their kittens take away, they will develop metabolic bone disease because they won't necessarily have the best nutrition. They won't get the exercise they need and all of that, and are taken from their mothers almost immediately after birth. So one thing that we wanted to make sure was that we got x-rays on them. And this is our x-ray machine, and it's very, very heavy. So we lift this up and we hold it over the cat. And if you saw the picture from that, hold on, my brain's gonna click here in just a second. For the picture of the live event from this morning, there was a picture of one of our keepers holding the x-ray machine over the serval so that we could get x-rays. And it's really important for us to get these x-rays because we want to know if there's been any fracture, are there currently any fractures, or are there any healed fractures. So the different x-rays we have are their back legs, which I'm pretty sure should go that way. Hopefully our vet's not watching, because I think she might be a little appalled with my descriptions. And then the other thing that we were looking for on these guys, knowing that some of them had previously been pets. So if you see that little white spot right there, that's actually a microchip. And while we don't microchip our animals, we always want to know that if they have a microchip, we want to go ahead and read the number and take that down as notes. So if something was to happen, that we know that we have the correct serval, or, stuff like that. So within these x-rays, we're looking for any type of fractures that may have healed. And in this one, she looks pretty good. We're also looking up at here's her head, her skull, and down along her spine. And we're also trying to determine potentially the age of the animal, whether their growth plates have closed or not. And so that's also something, especially when we don't know much about their past, to determine about how old they are, if we don't get any of those medical records. So here again, the R is going to stand for the right side. There's that microchip again. This is down along her spine. I don't know what this is. What's that? It's her heart. Uh-huh. That's good. It's in there. That's important. Make sure she's got a heart. And then here, what we noticed was that one of our guys, and this is actually Bowie's one of our boy servals, has a healed fracture. So if you see, there's a little bit of a line here, and that's where that fracture has healed. So that's something that we want to definitely keep an eye on, especially as he grows. Is that something that we may have to contend with in the future as far as his health? He is bow-legged, which is another sign of he didn't get the proper nutrition. So we'll keep an eye on that. With these guys, we did see with a few of them that they did have healed fractures. And then one of them had, their growth plates weren't fully fused. And so we know that she was on the younger side. And that's all important information for us to know how old they are, what potentially past medical history was. And then, like when we got Mama, we had heard that who was our latest serval that we got, who was living up in a state where it's illegal, We had heard that she had had a fracture in the past or a broken leg in the past. When we looked at it on x-ray, we actually didn't see anything like that. But that's something that we'll still keep an eye on as well. So even though we got that information from the previous owner, we didn't see any evidence of that on her x-rays, which was a good sign that maybe she didn't have it. Maybe she was just limping for another reason, if that's what they saw. So some other things we have here. When we first sedate them, what we will do is they'll go to sleep. We'll give them that medication through the syringe, either through the dart gun if it's a big guy, or through the pulse syringe if it's a small one. And then what we'll do is we'll go in, once they're sedated, and our vets will use the clippers, and on their back leg, one of their back legs, she will shave off a little part so she can put what's called a catheter in. And that catheter goes right into the vein, and we hook up propofol, which is a fast-acting sedation drug, to help keep them asleep. So what we don't want is for them to wake up during the procedure, because that would be dangerous. But we also don't want them sleeping all day. So with that propofol, we're able to give a little bit at a time if we're noticing that they're starting to rouse or giving us any kind of indication that they might be waking up. We'll give them a little bit of propofol to help them stay asleep. But it's one that wears off pretty quickly, so that once we are finished, we can wake them up really quickly. Also within that catheter, we give fluids. So anytime the animal is down, we hook them up to fluids, and they have a line, which is around somewhere.
I don't think I gave you a line.
That's okay. Good news is we're not doing a procedure today. So we will hook them up to fluids. That fluids is one to help that propofol go through. So it needs pressure to get into the veins and into their system. But it's also if we've noticed that they are maybe a little dehydrated, then we'll give them what are called sub-Q fluids. So if you think about humans, we hook us up to IVs, and we get fluids going when we're having some sort of procedure that requires sedation, or maybe you got really dehydrated and you just need fluids. You have to go through our veins. What's really cool about these guys is you could do what are called sub-Q fluids. So you take a needle, like, fingers aren't working today, like this, and the cap's on, so I'm not going to take it off so we can use it again. And you put it right up under their skin, and they're able to absorb those fluids that way. And so with our big guys, depending on how many fluids bags they may need, we can have 2 or 3 sub-Q fluids, bags of sub-Q fluids, or we can get as many as 3 or 4 depending on if they are dehydrated, if that's what we're seeing with them. Then, whenever we have our animals down, we of course want to take blood. And these are the tubes that we put the blood in. We'll usually take it ideally, from their jugular here. And so our vet will just go right into their jugular, pull some blood out so that we can send that out so that we can get a baseline. So we always get it when they're in quarantine so that we know if they have any underlying issues. And then anytime we get them down in the future for a physical, or if we know that there's a needed medical reason to get them down, we'll take blood so that we can keep a log on how things are going. That can tell us a lot of different things. It can tell us if they are in potentially kidney failure, which is something that occurs, I wouldn't say often, but can occur in older animals. It can tell us if they are producing enough white blood cells and red blood cells, and it just gives us an idea of what's going on. And if we don't get that baseline when they first come in, we don't know when we pull blood later, if it's normal or abnormal or anything like that. So that's really important as well. Some of that stuff we can run in-house. We have machines up top that we're able to do that. And then other times we will send it out to be able to get a full blood count, just as your labs would be sent out to a lab who can do the big hoopla of all the counts. This is our tackle box. This is our vet's best friend. What she's got in here are all the different needles of different sizes. I don't know what they all do, but they're all important, I assure you. We also have our medications down in here. So some of the things that we'll give our guys as they come up, like Cerenia, is to help them not feel nauseous afterwards. So if you think about it, if you've ever been sedated for something, and you come up and you just don't feel good and you don't want to eat, what we want our guys to do is feel as normal as possible, as quickly as possible. So we'll give them medications to help them gain that appetite back and kind of get everything going again so they can hop back up on their feet and feel good and normal again. And then we have other things like if we need to, a surgical blade, if we need to potentially take a biopsy of something, if we're seeing some sort of mass or anything that we need to biopsy, we'll use the surgical blade for that. We have sutures in here, of course. And then we also, oh, that would be in the fridge. We'll give our guys vaccines as well. They have noticed in the wild that lions and tigers have come down with distemper. So we will give them vaccines against distemper, which is interesting. And I think they're trying to find more information on that because it's really canine distemper, but they're seeing that it has a big effect on the big guys out in the wild. So we do vaccinate against that. We do vaccinate against, Catherine, help me out, some other things.
We do the FERCP, which are feline viruses, and rabies.
And rabies, that's right. And then, of course, you have your syringe, or your, syringe. Yeah, syringe, that's what it says, to pull up different medications. Now, ideally, we're not going to have to help our guys breathe. They're going to maintain their breath throughout, and that's something that we're going to keep an eye on. So every 5 minutes, we're doing a check on vitals. So we are checking their heart rate with our stethoscope, which is a little tricky sometimes to find on the big guys, especially if they're laying on that side. But we're checking that every 5 minutes. We're checking their how many breaths they're taking for a minute, and then we're also checking their temperature. So our guys can get overheated very quickly, and we want to make sure that they don't overheat. We also want to make sure that they don't get too cold. So there's that fine line of where they need to be, and we are checking that every 5 minutes to make sure that we don't miss anything. We also always have somebody, one of our keepers, up at their head. So I'm gonna show you on an X-ray because I don't have a cat with me. There will be a keeper up here at our head, at the head of the animal. Tiger, lion, serval, ocelot, doesn't matter. And what their job is the whole entire time is to make sure that they are keeping an eye on whether this cat is waking up or not. So they're checking jaw tone. They're seeing if they have any reaction, if they're opening their mouth. Is that animal fighting that back? They are touching the side of their eyes to see if they get any blink response. And then, of course, cats don't like for their ears to be touched, so they'll flick their ears and see if they get any response out of that. That is their sole job during this entire thing, because if they notice that the cat is having any sort of reaction, they've got to let the vet know, or the person who is doing the propofol or the anesthesia to help them, to let them know so that they can give them a bit more. What we do not want is for these animals to wake up before they are supposed to. All right. So ideally, this animal is going to have no problems under anesthesia. They're going to lay there. They are going to handle it beautifully, and then they're going to wake up beautifully. But of course, we know sometimes they have their own ideas. So if they start to have trouble breathing, what we have are trach tubes, and humans sometimes need trach tubes as well. And what this does is go right down into down their trachea so that we can breathe for them. So it hooks up to this, and we can give a breath for them. But of course, this is way too small for a tiger. So we've got this one. Can you imagine that one going down your throat? No. And then we have a bigger
Ambu bag.
to use for these guys, because of course that one's a little too small, right? All right. What have I missed? So when we have them down, we, just as with when humans are having procedures, they'll actually, I don't know if you guys know this, I didn't know this, They will close our eyes, of course, so they don't dry out, because if you think every time we blink we are giving moisture to our eyes so they don't dry out. So we have to do that for our guys too, and what we do is we put lube inside their eyes because their eyes don't close quite like ours do. And that's on this somewhere. It's totally fine. But what they'll do first is they'll actually take a look in their eyes, because if they do it after they put the lube in, they're not going to get, or vet's not going to get a good idea of what their eyes are looking like. Looking for any kind of abrasions, any kind of cloudiness within the eye that may not have been there previously. And then she can also use it, this one, to look within their ears. So our guys' ears, just like our ears, are extremely important. And so she wants to make sure, vet's going to make sure there's nothing stuck in there, that everything looks intact and everything looks good. So anytime we have our guys down, even if we know that it's for a specific reason, maybe somebody's not feeling well, and we know that we don't think that there's anything wrong with their eyes and their ears, we're always going to take a look, because we can't do that otherwise. It's not like us going to the doctor with a cold and you can do it freely. We have to do everything we can while they're sedated, because we won't necessarily have another chance. We look at their paws, we look at their claws. These guys, our servals, are declawed, so we're looking at their pads to make sure that the bone's not coming through their pads. We're going to make sure that there's no cuts on their paws, and that they're walking appropriately. Just again, to make sure that everything's okay. We look at their teeth, we look at everything, because again, once they are awake, we can't do that. They're not going to allow us to do that. What did I miss?
Well, we have a question of, when you shave them, will their hair grow back?
It will, and what's super cool about tigers is if you shave them where one of their stripes is, you can see their stripe on their skin, but it will grow back. They look funny for a little bit depending on how big of a spot we need to shave. Typically, if it's just a regular physical, we're just shaving part of their leg. But if we are having to do any kind of biopsies or check anything out, we may have to give a larger portion, and then it just looks like we just shaved them, and their stripes are still there, especially on the tigers and stuff, which is super cool. But yes, it does grow back.
How often do you get animals down for vet procedures?
So for our big guys, about every 2 years. It is really dangerous to put our tigers under sedation for a lot of reasons. One is they're tigers, but two, they don't always do so well under sedation. So we don't want to do it more often than we need to, but we also want to keep a baseline on them and make sure they're okay. If there's somebody who's exhibiting long-term health issues, we'll get them down sooner. We had a tiger, Emerson, who was having tooth issues or jaw issues, and so within the span of 3 or 4 months, we had him down 2 or 3 times, just trying to work that out. Whereas Raja, who has been healthy, we'll get down every 2 years or so, just again to get that baseline. We try not to do it as too often, again, for their safety as well as ours.
So this was a question specifically about how many vets do we have in the room, but can you tell them who all we would have in a room, let's say when we have the servals going down?
Sure. So we have 1 vet on staff. We have another one who we can call in should we need it, but our vet is Dr. Lassiter, and she is with us part-time. If we had more animals, she would be with us all the time, and if it was up to her, she would be with us every day. But typically in a room, if we've got a serval down, we will have a keeper at the head of the animal. Catherine will be there as well, monitoring the vitals of that animal. And then we may have one other person who's helping run fluid lines or anything else that the vet may need. So typically 3 or 4 people can do a serval. If it's a big guy like a tiger, we definitely need more hands on deck, especially if that animal has to be moved. But we try to keep it as few people as possible, just for safety reasons.
If I wanted to work at Carolina Tiger Rescue, what kind of college degree would I need?
So it depends on what area that you would want to work in. So I have a degree in education. I was previously a teacher, so I get to come out here and teach people. Our keepers have degrees in wildlife management and
Animal science?
Animal science, I think. It's hard to keep track of everybody. But the main and the biggest thing is if you have any interest at all in working with animals, whether it be small cats like house cats or big guys like tigers, is to volunteer, because you may decide, yeah, scooping up that poop is not for me. The hot days in the summer are not for me. So any kind of volunteering that you can do, any type of internship that you can do, is really going to give you insight, and it also is helpful for the organization to say, hey, this person is really committed, and they want to make sure that we want them with us. If we know that you're volunteering with us, then you believe in our cause and believe in our mission and want to help us with it, and that looks really good once you become interested in potentially a job here or at any facility, really.
And of course, we discussed bringing this with us, but we had a question of, how do you move the animals when they're under sedation?
It's a lot easier with a small cat. We did talk about it. I even suggested it, and Catherine's like, no, it's too big. So for small cat, we're going to move them in the crates. In small cats, we will take up to our vet center, which is up at the house. With our big guys, we try as much as possible to leave them in their enclosure and do their procedure in their enclosure. Again, like Emerson, for the first couple, 2 things we are able to do in his enclosure. Moving him is extremely dangerous, not only for him, but for us as well. He is sedated, but lots of stuff can go wrong. And our sole focus, of course, is keeping him safe and keeping us safe. And that's one of the reasons we don't do vet procedures live as much as people would like. And that's because, again, we want to keep everybody safe. So if we have to move them, let's say with Emerson, we eventually moved him over to quarantine, so we had better access to him and could keep a closer eye on him. We, of course, sedated him. And then we have what's called a litter. And it's just a giant, I don't even know,
It's a piece of like fabric with handles.
Fabric with handles. We roll him into it. It takes a lot of us. Sometimes if we're moving a big guy like a Capriccio, it could take 4 people on each side moving him. We close the entire sanctuary down, so nobody is allowed in the sanctuary except staff members. We removed him. I think that day it took at least 7 of us to remove Emerson. We put him on the back of a trailer and got him up to our quarantine building while sedated. And then we moved him into our quarantine building and locked back up and could open up the sanctuary. So it's a big blue piece of fabric with handles on each side that we can grab. So there's people on each side all the way up to move him. It's a very slow process, and it's a very strenuous process to move him, but that is all because of the safety measures we have in place to keep him asleep and to keep everybody safe as well.
This is a good one. How do we pay for our vet bills?
How do we pay for our vet bills? With donations. So we have a medical fund that we put money into, and you can donate strictly or straight to the medical fund if that's something that you're interested in or people are interested in. We also will do fundraisers if we know that we've got a big medical bill coming up. Some of our guys come in with some pretty significant health issues, and we know that, and so we'll ask for help with that. But anytime we take an animal in, we know that we're going to be able to prepare and for any long-term health issues or big health issues, and we won't take anybody in unless we know we can care for them. We've also had amazing people who will donate their time and their resources. When we had dentals done last summer, oh gosh, 2 summers now. I don't even know what year it is. 2 summers ago, a wonderful group, Peter Emily Animal Dentistry, came in. There were at least 10 of them, human and animal dentists alike, who donated their time and their resources to us to help care for 4 of our guys in giving root canals. We also have other vets around who work with larger animals like horses, who can help provide some of their equipment on a short-term basis as well. But we do have a separate medical fund. We do fundraise for that. We will sometimes make that our fund a cause for our Black Tie and Tails ball. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Catherine?
No, that pretty much covers it.
All right.
Do we have anybody in quarantine right now?
We do not. which is exciting for a couple reasons. One is quarantine adds its own challenges, of course. We're happy to have, it means either that we have a new animal in, or there's an animal who needs some quality time and time in an enclosed space where we can get a better look at them. Mama was our last animal in quarantine. She came to us over a month ago now. Spent our 30 days in quarantine. We did our physical, we did her blood work, we did everything that we needed to for her. She was deemed healthy and we got to move her outside. But with quarantine, of course, as I said, it comes with its added challenges. If there's an animal in quarantine like Mama, when they first come, it means that the keepers have to, and anybody who goes in there, has to take extra precautions. There are disinfectants we have to spray on shoes. Clothes have to be changed before we can go to the rest of the sanctuary, or you're done for the day in the sanctuary. Different shoes have to be put on at times, and different disinfectants used and all that, so that if Mama had, which she was healthy, had she had anything that could have been transmitted to any other animals, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So as excited as we are when we have animals in quarantine because they're new, it does add challenges, and of course we're willing to do that, but we're also glad right now not to have that added challenge at this moment.
Somebody asked, what is the size of quarantine? Like, how big are their enclosures in there?
Great question, Catherine.
So, I may have the exact numbers a little off. So we have 4 bays in quarantine, and each bay is about 20 by 30 feet. And when we have animals in there, they'll have access to 2 of those bays at a time. So there's a shift gate that goes in between them. And so that way, when we need to do like enclosure cleaning, we can shift them over to one side, drop that gate down, clean it up, and then open it back up. Now, with that being said, those are their indoor areas. And then once they are cleared of a few things, we can open them out to an outdoor area, and that's much larger. That wraps around the entire outside of quarantine.
Very good.
Roger agrees.
Excellent. Thanks, Roger. Any 1 or 2 more questions? And I was thinking they're laying in the sun. I don't know if we want to get another look at the ladies here.
Hello, ladies. Oh, you guys are going to be in a hard spot for me to get to, aren't you? See, we're hanging out in the sun, but not too sunny. We like having our little bit of shade. How old are these ladies?
Oh gosh. Between their ages range between I think 3 and 7 years old. And yeah, I think 3 and 7 between the 7 servals. Again, we didn't have amazing records for some of them. Some of them who had been previously owned pets, we had heard from people and they could tell us birth dates and years and that kind of thing. With others, we didn't have that information. So we were going by x-rays and any kind of information that we could pull from that. I think the important thing to remember with these guys is where they came from. They were literally living in RVs in a backyard, being constantly bred for the kittens so the kittens could be sold as pets. And what we're finding is now that we've got these 7, we have Mama, we have Zoe, we have Elvis, Savannah. The majority, all but one of our servals were previously on pets, and people are realizing that they're not pets. They are wild animals, and that needs to be said over and over. And I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but these are wild animals who deserve the best life possible, and that's not in somebody's house. They're not meant to be in people's houses. They are wild animals who are hunters and who will eat things, inappropriate things, and if they can't be in the wild, this is the next best place for them here. So the way that you can help is to not support those breeders. If they don't have any clients, then they're going to stop doing it. And again, I feel like you guys are all behind us and know and understand this, but it's helpful to have you guys behind us and tell other people that as well. Their health and their well-being is definitely most important to us, and we want to make sure that that pet trade ends as quickly as possible so that these guys can enjoy their son here at Carolina Tiger Rescue instead of being locked in a crate in somebody's house. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in this morning on this gorgeous day. I think it's going to get hot, so these guys will likely find the shade pretty quickly. But it's going to be a gorgeous day here at Carolina Tiger Rescue and in North Carolina. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking in with our girls and seeing how we do our vet procedures. And hopefully you'll tune in tomorrow. We're going to go feed some guys again with one of the keepers. The activity in this video will be back up on our website shortly. And we hope you have a good day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.